So full disclosure, I originally planned to have this review ready for February 29th, but stuff got in the way, videos just kept getting pushed back, so ultimately I had to wait a couple of weeks before I could actually get around to watching this movie. But at least it's appropriate in that it's the same month as St. Patrick's Day, and it's in a couple of days, so try to make do with what you got, I guess.
Get ready to lose your mind. Guess who I saw walking out of the store carrying that little red bag? Oh my God.
So this is for you.
Okay, hold on. We gotta work on your surprise face. Ask me. Will you marry me? Bigger eyes? Oh, me? The good news is you have time to practice between now and then. They're earrings.
Yeah. A little something to keep your ears warm while I'm in Dublin.
It is leap year, you know. In Ireland, a woman can propose to a man on the 29th of February.
Dad, I'm not going to Dublin. Oh my God! I'm not gonna die without getting engaged.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are diverting to Cardiff, Wales.
Wales? Hello. I need a taxi to Dublin.
I'm your man, missus.
I'll drive you to Dublin.
Thank you. I'm going to propose to my boyfriend on leap day.
Yeah?
Yeah. So I thought,
Woo! That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
This was all I wanted.
So like most of the movies I end up talking about, I went digging through a bunch of worst movie of the year lists, and sure enough, this popped up on a lot of worst movies of 2010 lists. Finding out that this was a January release wasn't that surprising. If you're familiar with Blockbusters show or just bad movies in general, it's pretty well established that movies that get dumped January, February, and sometimes August are the movies that the studios have very little confidence in, and they just put them out because there's not a whole lot of big things to go up against. Unlike Envy, the last movie we talked about for Blockbusters, this one did have a couple of critics coming to its defense. Very couple, but yeah, that's still more than I could find for Envy. And, well, it did make its money back, so it is a little bit more of a success than Envy, but yeah, it seems like this movie is still pretty frowned upon, and after watching it, I can see why. When yet another anniversary passes without a marriage proposal from her boyfriend, Anna, played by Amy Adams, decides to take action. Aware of the Celtic tradition that allows women to pop the question on February 29th, she plans to follow her lover to Dublin and ask him to marry her. Fate has other plans, however, and Anna winds up on the other side of the Emerald Isle with handsome but surly Declan, an Irishman who may have led Anna down the road to true love. There's a lot of bad movies that I don't really like watching, but romantic comedies, especially when they're done badly, these are the kind of movies I just cannot sit through. Got the movies that are like Something About Mary, Meet the Parents, Wedding Crashers, even something like Hitch, where those movies, you know, say what you want about them, but I can at least watch them. They're at least well-structured movies, and they do have a lot of charming moments that either make you laugh or they have romance scenes between the characters that you actually buy, at least in my opinion. But then you got movies like this, or What's Your Number, What to Expect When You're Expecting, New Year's Eve, The Bounty Hunter, Killers, all these kind of just generic crapfest rom-com movies, and this one definitely falls into the category of stuff like Killers and The Bounty Hunter, where the two main leads are, for the most part, incredibly unlikable, and most of the sentimentality feels incredibly forced. It sucks because you have two very talented actors. You have Amy Adams and Matthew Good, and they've both been in really good dramatic roles and very good comedic roles every now and again, but this movie right here is just middle-of-the-road Hollywood schlock that just gets dumped out beginning of the year because the studio's like, well, maybe people will like it, and if they don't, fuck it. It's not like we spent that much on it. I would complain about this more, but really, this is standard practice for a lot of actors. You know, they do something to show off credibility, and then they do a movie just so they can pay off a mortgage on their house. The beginning of the movie takes place in Boston, and our main character is Anna, played by Amy Adams. Her biggest frustration at this point in her life is that she's been with her boyfriend, played by Adam Scott, for 6 years, and he still has yet to pop the question. They're even going to have this big anniversary dinner together, and she thinks that it's going to be a wedding ring, but no, he just gets her a fancy pair of earrings. Before she goes to the dinner, she shares this information with a couple other people. One is a best friend character who's really just in the movie for 2 scenes. She's in the beginning and at the end. And what I found funny about this character is that she's played by Sweet D from It's Always Sunny.
Guess who I saw coming out of DePrisco's?
Who?
Jeremy.
You did? When?
On the way here. The cab was stuck in traffic, and I look over, and he's walking out of the store carrying that little red bag. There's only one reason people go into DePrisco's. You're gonna have a better engagement ring than me, you big jerk.
Really made me wish that this movie was rated R, because in that show, she's really funny. She's really great as Sweet D on that show. But really, yeah, like I said, 2 scenes. She just shows up. She's the best friend who's just supposed to be there to get some expository dialogue out of the main character. The other person she talks to is her father, played by John Lithgow. And this is really bizarre to me because he's listed 4th in the credits, and he's in 1 scene, and then we never see him ever again.
My daughter is engaged. Garçon, champagne.
He's just there to show up, talk to Amy Adams for a little bit, and he tells her about this old Irish tradition where on a leap year, on February 29th, the woman can pop the question to the man.
That's what Grandma Jane did to Grandpa Tom. You know, they'd been dating for a while, and he was dragging his feet, so she finally suggested they pay a visit to the old country. February 29th, Dublin, Ireland. She hits him with it. Boom! Ring on finger, signed, sealed, delivered.
Weirdly enough, John Lithgow also had an incredibly short 1-scene appearance in the previously reviewed New Year's Eve, which came out a year after this one. Coincidence? I think not.
Dad, I've got to go.
No, I just got here.
Yeah, well, you were late. We said 7.
Oh.
So while they're at their anniversary dinner, he won't stop dicking off on his phone because, of course, he has business calls going on. He can't even turn off when he's at an anniversary dinner with his girlfriend of 6 years. So it's like the movie is making it painfully obvious, you're not supposed to like this guy. He's not the real love interest for the movie. And he says, oh man, I gotta cut dinner short. I gotta go take care of some business stuff. I gotta fly over to Dublin in Ireland to, talk about business with one of my executives. So Amy Adams goes back to her apartment, sad and alone for the night because her boyfriend is now flying off to Ireland and she's just hanging out there all by her lonesome. She goes on the computer, looks into this little Irish tradition her dad was talking about, and, well, this is kind of confusing. They say leap day, but the movie is called Leap Year. And yeah, I know, it takes place on a leap year, but it made me wonder, why isn't the movie just called Leap Day then?
Leap year proposals are an old folklore tradition that dates back to the 5th century, sure.
After learning all this information, Amy Adams decides that she's going to try that, and just overnight she hops a plane to Ireland. It's here where it feels like the movie was trying to establish her biggest character flaw, is that she's incredibly OCD and constantly trying to bring order to things and categorize things, and she can't just take a simple leap of faith and stuff like that. They do this by having her talk to a priest on her flight, and then after long stretches of her talking and talking and talking, it crossfades and we see that the priest is asleep.
It's gonna knock down that wall. You see? If we open up the kitchen a little, I think it flows better into the dining area. It just creates a more free overall.
Her flight ends up getting caught in a storm and the plane rattles around a lot, so then they have to land at a different airport, and, well, Amy Adams tries talking to 2 flight attendants to try and help sort this out and figure out how she can get to Dublin. And for no reason, they just give her a bunch of back sass.
Will you ring Dublin International Airport and get them to open a runway, especially for Madam, right away?
She goes to a bunch of different airports. Ultimately, she ends up getting a boat, and it's still storming violently out. And then, instead of trying to help direct her to somewhere that could help her on dry land, the boat just pisses off. And so she walks on the beach in high heels because, God, this movie loves its stupid, ugly American humor.
If one of you can direct me to the nearest hotel or bed and breakfast. Of course, this is also the hotel.
She goes into this little inn. There's like 5 people sitting around drinking booze, sharing stories and making each other laugh. And they just constantly try to make her look like the dumb American because she asks for things like, oh, where's your local inn? Oh, this is the local inn. Well, can you at least get me a taxi? Oh, taxis don't come out here.
The year the last Dublin bus left Dingle.
No. The train stopped running in 87. The bus stopped running in 1989.
It was 1987.
And this just establishes one of the other many problems this movie has. This movie makes Ireland look like it's cut off from the rest of the world. Like, seriously, this was just a step above having everyone drive around with cars that they don't actually drive. They're pulled by horses and donkeys. And I know that Ireland is a very kind of old school, rustic, very traditional kind of country, but this movie borders on doing the same thing to Ireland what Borat does to Kazakhstan. The person who's giving her the most grief is Declan, played by Matthew Good, the real love interest of the movie. And, well, he's supposed to contrast because she's all prim and proper and snooty and snobbish. He is more, you know, live life to the fullest. He runs a bar all on his own. You know, he don't play by no rules. He's a regular Flynn Rider type guy. Except he is saddled down with having the responsibility of a bar, which they later explain that, oh, he has to pay off because he's in a heap of debt. No time for that. We have to get to some real wacky shenanigans because this is a bad rom-com from 2010. So she goes to her room for the night and she says that she's going to try and take off for Dublin in the morning. So when she gets to her room, which is about the size of a closet, she tries to plug in the charger for her phone, but apparently this part of Ireland is, again, so backwater swampland that simply plugging in a charger for a smartphone makes all the lights in this little village go out.
There we go.
And on top of that, she's just so clumsy. She makes every single thing topple over in this room. She makes a mural full of clothes fall over. She makes like the bedstand fall over, the lamp on top of the bedstand. Oh, it's just so wacky. The next morning, Amy Adams needs someone that can drive her to Dublin, and even though Declan says that, oh, Dublin is just nothing but a den of snakes, basically, full of backstabbers and people who are just out to get you, he decides that he's going to take her because he really needs the money. So they hop into his little car, and they start hitting the valley sides, and first of all, I gotta point out, this movie was put out by Universal. Universal is a big fucking company. They have lots of money to spare, and granted, this was a January release, but for 2010, the green screen effects that they're using, like not just in this scene in particular, but later on as well. This is some of the shittiest green screen I've seen in a mainstream Hollywood movie since like Ballistic X vs. Sever. It's that bad. Here's where we get to one of my main problems with not just this movie, but just rom-coms like this in general. I hate when they make it so painfully obvious at the beginning where, oh, opposites attract, you know, oh, she's the snobby American who's all about, you know, hoity-toity fashion and high society in Boston. Meanwhile, he's the more rustic guy who just lets life carry on out and he just kicks back and watches cattle go by while chewing on an apple. And, you know, they have this back and forth, you know, there's a running gag where he gives her suitcase the nickname Louis because she says it's a Louis Vuitton, and he doesn't get that fancy fashionista world American talk. And then we just get to one of the many dumb comic set pieces of the movie. They get cut off by a bunch of cattle, and Amy Adams gets out of the car, tries to shoo the cattle. Meanwhile, Matthew Good tells her to just wait and let the cattle go on through anyway. But once they get out, she steps in cow shit.
I want to just watch out. Step.
Great to see nothing but the highest form of comedy in this film. Because he apparently forgot to put on a parking brake, she then leans on the car to try and clean her shoe, and then the car rolls back. He jumps on the hood of the car and then eventually he's flung off of it, and the car ends up crashing into a river. So now they're without a car. And this is just one of the many things where, when you really think about it, there's no reason for him to keep traveling along with her, other than, well, it's a rom-com and they need to eventually fall in love with each other. But his promise was to drive her there. Now that the car is damaged, he really doesn't need to keep following her there, other than, oh, well, I guess he does really care about her and he wants to make sure that she doesn't get hurt, walking all the way from where they are to Dublin. And from there, there's just a bunch of dumb comedic set pieces like that. They go walking for a little bit, and then out of nowhere, there's a van that has like 3 guys in it, and they pretend to offer them a ride, but then they steal her suitcase, and then they just keep driving. And then they conveniently come across them in the next scene, because they stop at a bar, and she tries to make a phone call to her boyfriend, and then they come across these guys, and they're rummaging through her clothes, and then they get into a fist fight that's very awkwardly shot. There's just a lot of like shaky cam and quick cuts to try and cover up the choreography. And then after that's said and done, they just leave. It's like, what was the point of any of that? And this is pretty much just the rest of the movie. It's just them going to different set piece after set piece. All the while, they slowly try to make it like, oh, they care about each other. Oh, their sparks are flying. They're starting to connect. Keep in mind, at this point in the movie, they say they have 2 days before the 29th. So just to give a sense of a ticking clock element, I guess. So after the bar scene, they go walking a little bit more. They stop off at a train station, and the conductor says that it'll be 15 minutes before the next train to Dublin shows up. So to kill the time, instead of just simply sitting on the bench and killing 15 minutes, they go for a walk up a hill, and they go to the ruins of an old castle. And this is one of the many times in the movie where they try to show off these classic Irish stops and all these beautiful landscapes. All the while, a lot of the time, it's just green screen, obviously.
It is said, you know, that unable to resist such beauty. But here...
But this is the other thing, and I mean, even someone who's not super well versed in Irish culture, it's pretty easy to tell that the places that they're stopping aren't linear. Like, all these places are scattered all throughout Ireland, but they make it look like it's all along one big scenic strip. And it's like, no... Absolutely not, no. Even where Declan is supposed to be from, in real life, that's a huge town that has like, it's bustling, no different than Dublin, but because they want it to contrast, they make it just a small village that looks like it has like 15 people living in it. So as they walk through the fallen ruins of this castle, he tells a little story about a woman who tried to use Leap Day to propose to a warrior many years ago, but then, oh, she fell in love with another guy. And it's the movie... Every time it has scenes like this, it's like it's just nudging you on the shoulder like, they're gonna get together. Did you know that?
You're hitting on me.
What?
I'm the young woman on the eve of her engagement that can't resist a handsome stranger. Oh, come on.
I'm what?
You didn't honestly think that was gonna work, did you?
Don't flatter yourself, darling. The story's true.
Even from the perspective of someone who doesn't like rom-coms, I've heard people make the argument that, well, even though you know the leads are going to get together, you want to see the chemistry fly. But that's the problem with bad rom-coms like this one, and The Bounty Hunter, and Killers. Most of the movie is spent with the 2 leads just bickering and being catty towards one another. So it's not pleasant to watch. So not only do they miss the train, but they also get caught in a storm. And the conductor says that he'll let them stay at his place with his wife, because they occasionally let couples stay there. So they have to lie that they're a couple.
2 backpackers at the door wanting the room. But they weren't married. Admitted it right out, no shame. So I sent them packing. Right is right, rain or no rain. So, it's Mr. and Mrs.
O'Callaghan.
Conveniently, there's another couple staying there from Italy, and here's where you get the movie's idea of a joke, because not only do the couple that own this house start making out at the kitchen table, So do the other couple. And it was at this point I was like, okay, you have a really good setup for a joke. You could have it that this is a bunch of swingers and they want them to join in, and then eventually they go running out until they come across some other place that could take them in. No, instead, after the two other couples kiss, they then have to kiss each other, and oh, it seems like they both really liked it. And then this is immediately followed with a scene of them trying to sleep and, again, bickering with one another about who gets the bed, and oh, one has to sleep in the shower.
Well, you're not sleeping in that bed with me, Mr. O'Brady Callahan.
Maybe you're not sleeping in bed with me.
Very gallant.
Gallant?
The next day, while the couple are out for the day, they start bonding by talking with each other while they're trying to cook dinner as a way to thank the couple for letting them stay there. There's this really shocking moment where Matthew Good just snaps a chicken's neck. They're slowly bonding. There's a moment where the conductor comes home and tells them that his wife is not going to be eating with them because, oh, she went to Dublin for the weekend. So, oh, wah, wah. They go walking a little bit more, a little bit after that. Then it starts sleeting, so then they run into a building to try and get it out of the weather, and they end up stepping into a church that has a wedding going on.
Jesus Christ!
Is Lord.
Have you any just cause or impediment why this man and this woman should not be joined together in holy matrimony?
And despite the fact that neither of these two know anyone at this wedding, they just let them stay there anyway as guests. Like, they let them stay for the reception, the after party, where, oh, they share a dance number together. Oh, it's so cool. She's finally letting her hair down and being a free spirit and, you know, not being such a control freak. And then we get some bad rom-com slapstick because during their little shindig on the dance floor, one of her shoes ends up flying off and it clocks the bride in the face. But oh, then Amy Adams tries to help her and she ends up spilling wine on her dress because she's just so gosh dang clumsy.
Please,
I swear, man, that's like Chuck Lorre sitcom shit. All that was missing from that was a laugh track. Like, when the shoe hits the bride in the face, you just hear, ooh! And then when the wine spills on her dress, you just hear people, ah! So after that bit of hilarity, they talk a little bit more. They're clearly starting to like each other more and more. Matthew Good reveals that he doesn't want to go to Dublin because he got his heart broken there. Again, much like the previously reviewed New Year's Eve, remember how in that movie one of the subplots had Ashton Kutcher and the girl from Glee, and she revealed that, oh, he hates New Year's Eve because a girl broke his heart on New Year's Eve. It's pretty much the exact same thing here. Just to hammer home that they're starting to like each other more and more, they have her constantly like cuddling up with him. Like, they have to sleep on a park bench for the night, and she's like, she has her head in his lap, and then they go on a train at one point and she's like resting her head on his shoulder. It's like, we get it, movie. They're gonna get together. You're not even trying to be subtle with this. They finally get to Dublin. They go to the office that Adam Scott's supposed to be at, and Amy Adams writes Matthew Good a check, and he turns it all down. Even though he's in crippling debt, he refuses it. So, character growth, I guess. Then he finally gets the guts to run over to her and be like, wait, before I go, one more thing. But oh, Adam Scott walks in, and then he gets on his knees and proposes to her. So, oh, poor Matthew Good. Now he has to go back to that little village and try to save his bar all on his own. This essentially takes the place of the third act falling out montage because they fly back to Boston and Amy Adams is contemplating if she did the right thing. All the while, Matthew Good has like a fundraiser charity event to try and help save his bar, and surprise, surprise, it actually works. Because he has like a bunch of money in a pail, and the people he owes money to are like, that's not enough. But then those like three guys that we saw from the previous scene where they were at the bar. They step in and they're like, oh, well, here's the money. And so then people start putting down money. So, oh, they saved the bar.
You show us the color of your wallet for a change. That's all.
This feels like this should have had more conflict to it, but really there's no stakes in this movie. So that whole subplot of, oh, will he save the bar? That really didn't amount to anything. It's also interesting because the first time we see the bar, granted it's at night, but they try to make it look kind of dingy and run down, and oh, it's, you know, it's a little dive bar that only a couple of old farts come in to share stories, and it's not a bar that's really going anywhere. But then at the beginning of this montage, which is in the third act of the film, out of nowhere, it's all cleaned up. like it's all cleaned up. It's like packed with people. It's like, wait, when did all this happen? Could this not be the plot of the film instead? Because I kind of would have liked to see a story about this. You know, guy, struggling restaurant, trying to keep it afloat. Eventually, you have the obligatory montage where they change the restaurant to make it, you know, pop more and try to get more people to come. And it would have been way more interesting than the movie's plot.
Thank you. You are saving the pub. You're taking the back to the kitchen. I will kiss you there.
While back in Boston, Amy Adams and Adam Scott are having a little get-together with a bunch of friends and family, and it's here where Adam Scott reveals the only reason he proposed is because...
Well, I think it was Edith from the board. She called me in Dublin probing about our marital status. Can you believe that? Nothing specific, just interested, you know? Like the residents, they're kind of old-fashioned when it comes to issues like this, blah, blah, blah. I got the message. Married, you're in. Unmarried, you're not.
So Amy Adams, in a last-ditch effort to get away from Adam Scott, decides to throw a fire alarm that just so happens to be there. Which, yeah, you know, false pulling of a fire alarm just to get away from your dick fiance. Oh, and just to hammer home that the guy is a douche, instead of trying to make sure that the two of them get out okay, first thing he runs to is to grab all of his electronics.
Okay, here's a video camera. Still haven't put the proposal up on Facebook, so let me get that. Oh, sweetie, can you get the,
That's it. That's the last time we see Adam Scott, so yeah, enough of him. Crossfade to a little bit later, we see, well, they try to throw a curveball, and that, oh, maybe Matthew Good's gonna get back together with his ex. She shows up for like a couple seconds. I know that they did this to set up like, oh, Amy Adams is back, but he doesn't know that she's back yet. So he's in the back kitchen and he gets a complaint that the chicken is too dry. So then he basically just storms out and starts berating people.
All right, which one of you bollockses thinks my chicken's dry? You? You?
Oh, it turned out that it was Amy Adams who asked about the chicken because she didn't really care about the chicken. She just wanted to see him. Instead of just simply going to like the pub and saying, hey, is Declan here? Or going into the back kitchen to talk to him and get his attention there. No, they have to do it in front of all these people. So it could be this big dramatic moment. And in front of all these people, she asks him if he wants to get with her.
So what do you say? Do you want to not make plans with me?
It cuts to Amy Adams sulking to herself on this big open hillside. Again, like super iconic place in Ireland that's in real life nowhere near where they are. But then he walks out and he confesses his love for her. And he says, oh, I didn't say no. I didn't say anything.
You said no.
I didn't say no. I didn't say anything.
He gets down on one knee and he pulls out the ring that he got from his ex. And of course, she says yes, despite the fact they've only known each other for a couple of days. That's the other weird thing about bad rom-coms like this. Like, even some of the other ones I've reviewed, you had it that they at least had a past or that they've, you know, been with each other for a number of years. she's been with Adam Scott, who, yeah, his character was a total douche, but they've been together for 6 years. She's known this guy for a couple of days, and marriage? Not like, hey, you want to start dating or anything like that. No, marriage. Yes, okay, credits. Although, wait, no, there's one more thing. They actually got his car fixed, and they have a little back and forth about that. And then as they peel off down to some Irish dirt road, you see on the back of the car it says just married, and there's like a bunch of cans on strings being pulled by the car, and the end.
Wait a minute. Where's Louis?
Louis, he's fine. Strapped him to the roof.
You strapped him to the roof? He'll get filthy up there.
Don't worry. We'll throw him in the wash. He'll be grand.
Okay, so better than Envy, yes, but certainly not a very good movie in its own way. Like I said, I am not really a fan of rom-coms, but even still, this is just the most generic, lifeless thing. This is the kind of movie where you can clearly tell that they were just doing it to get a paycheck. Nothing about this really screamed like, oh, we wanted to tell a romance story set in Ireland, and we get to show off all of Ireland's best qualities. It really feels like the people who wrote this didn't really know anything about Ireland, which is weird because they did film there. The leads, despite being played by good actors, they have no chemistry whatsoever. And when they do have chemistry, it's the most like, oh, this is the moment where you're supposed to cry and you want to see those two crazy kids get together. And Adam Scott, they make him such a cartoon douche that, like, you just know he's not going to be Mr. Right. You obviously know it's going to be Matthew Good. Everything about this movie is so paint by numbers. Despite this movie being marketed as a rom-com, there's really little to no comedy in this. I mean, the comedy that is there, it's bad. I mean, oh, person steps in cow shit, or person's shoe goes flying off and clocks someone in the head. I've seen a bunch of bad rom-coms where they tried way too hard to make the comedy funny, and it just came off annoying. Like, you had a bunch of the really lazy fart jokes, shit jokes, burp jokes. Oh, someone, you know, bad slapstick of people like bonking their head into a door or something like that, pratfalls, shit like that. This movie, on the other hand, despite a few moments where it feels like the movie stops to be like, oh, that's awkward, or oh, that's a joke, this movie really doesn't feel like a comedy. It just feels like a really bland romance story. One more thing before I forget. It's really a ripoff of this movie from 1995. It had Meg Ryan and Kevin Kline was in it. It's called French Kiss. It's basically the same premise, except instead of Ireland, it's France, where a woman flies to try and get with her fiancé, but then she falls in love with someone when she lands in France. It's essentially the same movie, except while I don't really remember a whole lot from it, I'm willing to bet it was still better than this was. Who knows, maybe I need to rewatch it and find out that was also a piece of shit. But either way, I think that wraps up Leap Year. So tune in next time to the Blockbuster Show. We have one more movie for this month, and we're going to be talking about Good Burger 2. Because I reviewed Good Burger a long time ago, and I said that, you know, not a perfect movie, but as something I was nostalgic for, I had fun with it. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the Paramount Plus sequel from last year is like and see if that's at least up to a similar quality. But until then, I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Oh. Let's hope Peter aren't watching this movie.